And let's find out what our good friend, life consultant, legal correspondent, and gambling buddy has to say about this. Ladies and gentlemen, it's FRI JAY.
Good morning, Americans. It's FRI JAY.
I like that modern take on it. It's good. Put your hands together, boys and girls, and welcome straight from the track, our own Jay St. Clair. Hello, Jay. How are you doing, my friend?
Hey, Matt. If I were any better, I'd be sitting at a racetrack right now.
Huh.
Oh, wait a minute. I am.
Tell everybody, before we get into any of this law stuff, and there's a lot of folks that are already lining up with their legal questions, tell everybody where you are.
Yeah, so I'm at a place called Atlanta Motor Sports Park. It's about an hour north of Atlanta. It's right outside of Dawsonville, Georgia, coincidentally enough, man. Mm-hmm. And so I'm over here for another one of these endurance races. We got practice today. We'll have a 7-hour race tomorrow, and an 8-hour race Sunday. And so I'm looking for it. It's going to be a little bit rainy, and, we run rain or shine. So it's going to be fun. It's good. We got 3 cars over here, a lot of guys. It's, this is my true passion. I love practicing law, but I really love driving race cars.
Well, you're good at it, and you got a great team, and you've hooked up with some good guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing if you can beat Jerry Weld on the track, Jay. That's what I'm looking forward to. And that is a comment reserved exclusively for the host of this show and my best friend Jay St. Clair, but I don't care.
No, that's right. It is so funny, Bill, because there's 2 guys that own these teams. They go back 20 years. They're very competitive with each other. And so the other guy has brought in a real professional race car driver, ringer.
A ringer. He brought in a ringer.
I mean, here's the guy that has won a race that's been won by Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott. He's that level of a race car driver. So we're going to have a fun weekend.
It's going to be fun. Have you been to, or are you planning to go to the Dawsonville pool room?
Yeah, no, I drove right by it yesterday, and sure, I got to stop in there sometime and get a bully burger.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know if they'll sound the siren for you, Jay, or not. But if you win the race, I'm going to strongly encourage the sounding of the siren. So
I like it. Noel, you got to win first.
That's right. Jay, what do you make of, I don't know that there's a lot that we can make of this situation. It just seems like an awful miscommunication. And dare I say, and look, I'm here to support the blue. I believe in the men and the women that do the hard job, and I'm not casting aspersions, but it feels like maybe there was a bit of an overreaction on the part of this police officer and just certainly some miscommunication. Any other thoughts on this Scotty Scheffler deal?
I do have this thought, and this will probably aggravate you a little bit, but this is a really good example of how the law works, the difference in black and white and how it gets applied in the real world. I'd say the law is this, man. Well, let's say that Officer A tells you to do something, and then 5 minutes later, Officer B tells you to do something different, and it contradicts what Officer A told you. And then you don't do what Officer B told you. Here's a law enforcement officer right in front of you saying, stop your car and get out. And you say, no, that's not what the cop 5 minutes ago told me to do, so I'm disobeying your order. That's probably a crime. Mm-hmm. Technically, that's a crime because it's against the law to disobey an order from a police officer. So technically, that's probably a crime, but you get in front of a judge, and that's when I love that statue of Lady Justice holding the scales out in front of her, and it's that balancing thing in the law. And I think that any judge looking at this would say, technically that may have been a violation, but considering all of the facts and circumstances, I'm going to turn you loose. I would not take Bell's bet because I think he wins that every time.
Yeah, I think this is followed up by an apology by Scotty. This is what I predict. Scotty Scheffler will apologize to the officer. He will apologize to everyone involved. He will say, I misunderstood what I was supposed to do. I am so sorry that this happened. I'm going to pay for his medical bills. I'm going to pay for his pants, and I think they'll let it go.
Yeah, no, that's great. I reckon he split his pants. I saw where you posted that on X. I'm like you. I want to know exactly what happened to the pants.
You think he split his britches, Jay?
I do, because I think he was hanging on to the car handle or something, and then he moved forward 5 yards. I think it embarrassed him. It split right down the middle.
That may be why he was so mad and ripped him out of the car and put him in cuffs. He cuffed him and he stuffed him, Jay. He cuffed him and he stuffed him. Just like old Barney Fife. Well, we'll see how that turns out. But obviously, it did not affect Scotty Scheffler enough that he got to the course. Complete lack of preparation, out of his routine. He gets to the course, gets to the first tee, and he birdies the first hole.
Now, that's just ice water in his face. I mean, if my practice is a routine is up, what a creature of habit I am. I'm going to skull the first tee ball, right? Not professionals. I mean, that's just absolutely remarkable.
Well, Jay, you are a professional in the legal sense, and we've got a couple of legal questions to ask you about. I know that your mind's on. And by the way, just as a side note, Jay, would you like to know before I go to that, because I just looked it up? Would you like to know what Scotty Scheffler's score is right now through 14 holes?
I don't have a clue, but I very much want to know.
He is 4 under par through 14 today. He is 8 under par for the tournament. He's tied for third place. He's 4 under after being arrested this morning for dragging a police officer down the road.
World-class athletes have this ability to concentrate, Matt. It's just remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable.
Well, look, I know you like to downplay your abilities behind the wheel of a race car, but you get it, right? I mean, you get behind the wheel of the race car, and you know that it's not just a matter of wanting to succeed. In a race car, when you're doing what you're doing, it's also your personal safety that you maintain that focus, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Can you hear the cars in the background?
No, not a lot. I hear you good, though. You sound better than you sound in your basement.
Well, I may have to start coming over here to the racetrack every week.
So everyone is speculating on what happened to the officer's pants.
Uh-huh.
And there's apparently on the Members Nutrition Super Text line, smart money is he did not split his pants.
Oh, he spoiled them.
He did something else that has an S and a.
Uh-huh.
Maybe. We call it spoiled them.
Yeah, spoiled them.
Jay, the last week in this Trump trial, I don't know that I ever thought that I would hear somebody on #NeverCNN, a network that hates Donald Trump, say what I heard them say on CNN. I want to play, for those who have not heard this I want to play this for everyone. And I think you'll be able to hear it too, Jay. But this was on CNN, and the hosts on the show, their faces when this legal correspondent said this about cross-examination of Michael Cohen. This came from yesterday's analysis of what happened in the court. Listen.
I don't think I've ever seen a star cooperating witness get his knees chopped out quite as clearly and dramatically as what just happened with Michael Cohen. I've certainly seen very effective cross-examinations of cooperating witnesses. I've seen aspects of their story cut into and called into question, but this goes to the heart of the allegation here, that phone call on October 24th, and it looks to the jury and to Anderson Cooper and Kara Scannell and Judge George Grasso, who were all in the courthouse, that was a devastating moment.
So that's on CNN, where this lawyer goober, this talking head lawyer, but he said, I don't think I've ever seen a star corroborating witness have his legs chopped out from under him in the way that Michael Cohen did. What's your take on all of this, Jay?
It's just awful. We talked about this last week, Matt, and I'll repeat it for those that weren't listening then. It's an embarrassment. I love the legal system. I love being a lawyer. I love what I do. I have great respect for the American legal system. This is it at its worst, Matt. It's just it at its worst. It's like the trial in To Kill a Mockingbird, or that was fiction. This is real, and it's just awful. It's the legal system at its worst. A case that never should have been brought. But if brought, the judge should have thrown it out. But if the case is going to be tried, it should have been tried by the rules of evidence. Best I can tell, there have been no rules of evidence applied. Any side can say anything they want to. And it's been about everything except Donald Trump committing a crime. I mean, they talked about everything except Donald Trump committing a crime.
You know, I feel a little bit like a broken record repeating this almost on a day-to-day basis, and I feel the same when you and I talk on these FRI Jays. But if you are to accuse him of these 34 falsifying documents charges, that's one thing. That's a misdemeanor. Each one of them is a misdemeanor, and the statute is run on those. But in order to bring it, you have to say, well, he was doing this, but he was doing this to either commit or conceal another crime.
No, that's
the only way that you can be in court. Yes. And the prosecution has not told anyone in court what that other crime is.
No, and I don't know if they ever will. And so here's what's going to happen. Here's the two big things coming up, man. The first big thing is, because it looks like the prosecution is about to arrest, this may be the last witness. And so here's the question. Will Trump testify?
Yeah.
So that's the first big question, number one. Well, I'll tell you what will happen before then. His lawyers will ask the judge to throw the case out of court.
So walk us through that. In a moment, we've got to take a quick time out, Jay, and I'll beg of you to be on hold for just a moment at the racetrack in Dawsonville, Georgia. 124. When we come back, I want Jay to walk us through, I think it's called a directed verdict. I think I have that right. Maybe I have that wrong. Jay will correct me if so. It's the Murphy Show FRI Jay edition on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. All right, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. A number of you calling in with questions of our man, Jay St. Clair, our legal correspondent, good friend and gambling buddy. We'll get to those questions coming up momentarily right after the bottom of the hour. Also, you can get your questions in on the membersnutrition.com super text line. Several of you asking questions about this particular case. My question is, Jay, if you don't mind, can you describe to us the manner in which that would happen? Is it called a directed verdict? Do I have that right?
Yeah, it is. In federal courts, judgment is a matter of law. But, you know, I'm not crazy about technical terms, man. So let's just use the best phrase, throw it out of court. Just throw the case out of court. And here's how that happens. The judge in trials acts as a filter. Matt, he looks at the evidence, and he says, if he says no reasonable juror, that's the legal standard, no reasonable juror could find Trump guilty, then he has a legal duty to throw the case out of court. That's the standard. And, you know, you can break it down a little bit more. Every crime has an element. There has to be substantial evidence of each element. But the standard is that no reasonable person could have found O.J. innocent. Oh, wait a minute. That was a different case. And it actually doesn't work that way. It only works with throwing a case out of court. And so if a judge looks at it and says, no reasonable person could find Donald Trump guilty of the crime of which he's charged, by law, the judge is supposed to throw that case out of court. But that's not going to happen here.
Because, I mean, you have no expectation that the judge will do any of that, just based on his prior actions and activity.
Right. Yeah, well, it's like the referees at Tuscaloosa. They don't call a fair game.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm told. That's what the Tennessee folk tell me all the time. All right, so hold your thought. Then we'll get to the next stage, and that is whether or not we believe that the defense will call any witnesses at all, what the risk is in that, and then, you know, whether or not Donald Trump will testify. Plus, many of you want me to ask Jay St. Clair this question, and here's the question. Michael Cohen testified earlier in the week that he secretly recorded his own client, Donald Trump, claiming that he did so for the benefit of Donald Trump. But a lot of us have questions about how in the heck that's legal and whether or not it violates attorney-client privilege. We'll ask Jay that question in a moment. All right, let's go. Let's jump on it. Jay St. Clair is with us. It is FRI Jay. Tim writes in and says, Jay St. Clair, could the Trump defense team call Alvin Bragg to the stand? I don't think that that's possible, but I'll ask the question. We've got a couple of questions on the line as well as we continue with Jay St. Clair live from the track outside of Dawsonville, Georgia, as he prepares to do some practice today and a little bit of endurance racing tomorrow and Sunday. Jay, what's next steps then? If we agree, and I certainly will defer to your knowledge about this, and I will agree with you based on my examination of the case, that there's no way this particular judge is going to offer a summary judgment on it. what are the options for the defense? I mean, obviously they could provide witnesses or whatever. They could just rest, couldn't they?
That's right. Yeah, they don't have to put on any evidence. And many times in a criminal case, that's the smart thing to do. The prosecution has the burden of proof, Matt, and they have to have proof beyond a reasonable doubt that the crime was committed. That's a high standard. So, in a substantial number of criminal cases, they don't put on any witnesses. But here's what I would say about this, and particularly whether Trump will testify. I would say this: if he were not running for president, right, and if it's solely about what is best calculated to win the criminal case, I do not believe he would testify. But I think it's more important to Trump to win being president than it is to win this case. I really do. I think he'd take a guilty verdict if it guaranteed him becoming president. And so I think that's the way the conversation will happen, and that's the way the decision will be made. And so I think there's greater than a 50% chance that Trump will testify. Because hey, Bell, if his lawyers say, President Trump, do you want to testify or not? What do you think his answer would be?
Hell yeah, I do. Let's get up there and get some time on camera.
You're exactly right, Bill. There's no doubt about it. So that's going to be a really interesting call, Matt. And I can't predict with certainty what it's going to be, but I'll tell you his lawyers don't want him to testify. He does. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, it's his case.
So if the defense decided to put on no witnesses, they would still get an opportunity to offer like a normal, typical closing statement, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so they could look to in other words, they could look to the jury and explain why they did not present any witnesses.
No, they'll tell them exactly why they did, if that's what they choose to do, which I do not believe will be the case. I think what they'll do, if I were trying the case, what I would do is turn it back on what the only misdemeanor crime we know about. We still don't know what crime they're going to be charged with. But I'd go back and say that, Trump is not the one that made these accounting entries.
Right. Right.
He didn't even commit that crime. What I would do is go back and focus the case on what it's really about. Mm-hmm. And then the next big thing, man, is the jury charge. And that's a big, big deal. The judge will charge the jury. Here's what you have to decide in this case. And that's when maybe finally at the end we're going to find out what the real felony crime is they're charging with.
Right at the end with the defense.
Here's the way it would be if he doesn't, man. It will be, okay, he's charged with doing this bookkeeping things to cover up some other crime. Now, we don't know what crime that is. It'll be up to y'all to decide if there was another crime, and if there was another crime, what that crime was. And so y'all can just pick whatever crime you want to. Surely the judge is not going to do that.
We would hope. I said earlier this week that I refuse to live in a world. You remember the Andy Griffith pickle episode?
Absolutely.
I just can't face the future of this world knowing that there's 8 jars of those pickles in it. Right?
So cucumbers.
I refuse to live in a world, Jay, where I believe that 12 individuals, no matter how much they hate Trump, I don't expect that all of them will vote to acquit him.
Right.
But I cannot believe that 12 of them would sit there and listen to what we've listened to over these last several weeks, and all of them decide that he's guilty of whatever it is they're charging him with. I mean, I have a hard time believing that.
Well, I refuse to believe that in the 21st century I can't drive 15 minutes to my home, even though there's a winter storm. So,
where'd you spend the night that night, Jay?
In my car. It's just one of those things that never happens, man.
A lot of questions involving Michael Cohen and his ability to secretly record Donald Trump. He admitted this week, or they played, testimony, talked about testimony, that he recorded Donald Trump during a telephone conversation of his. And he said, it was very odd. He said that Donald Trump did not know that it was being recorded, but that he was doing so to protect Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know the answer to this, but many of my listeners have asked me to ask you, Jay, and that is that legal, and does that not violate some level of attorney-client privilege?
Yeah, so those are two different questions. Let's talk first about the legality of it. If it was in New York, I'm pretty sure New York is a one-party state. That is so long as one party of the conversation consents to its recording, then it's legal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think it was a crime. Then there's a second question of, does that violate attorney ethics? And I hadn't looked at the specific provision of the New York law, but I'll tell you this: any bar association would frown greatly on that. They would frown on one lawyer secretly recording another lawyer, and I've had that happen to me. So I don't believe it's a crime, but boy, it is a terrible act of a lawyer. It doesn't violate attorney-client privilege until he plays it to somebody else. If he just records it and puts it in the safe and nobody ever hears it,
Mm-hmm.
then the privilege has not been broken, right? But if he plays it to somebody else, then that's absolutely violating it. The privilege is the client's. It's not the lawyer's, it's the client.
Mm-hmm.
And the lawyer can break the privilege only with the client's consent.
All right,
Well, it's not a crime, but it's a violation of lawyer ethics.
In the Trump trial, my question, this comes from 0792. My question for FRI Jay is, in the Trump trial, if the statute of limitations has run out and they have falsified evidence to bring him in court, can they be charged for filing false police reports and slander? Well, that's a very vague question. Hey, 0792. I'm gonna call a audible, and I'm gonna ask you to clarify your question. I don't know what falsification of evidence you are talking about when you say that they've done that in a court of law. I need you to.
Yeah, but there is this oddity about it, Matt. Right? He's trying to say that if you commit a misdemeanor to hide another misdemeanor, both of whom the statutes run, you still can be found guilty of a felony. A misdemeanor versus plus a misdemeanor to cover up the misdemeanor makes a felony. Well, that's like saying three rights make a left. I mean, it's odd. It's very odd.
I need to get my J question in. All right, this is, I believe, unrelated to the Trump trial, so this is nice. If a company gets hacked, mm-hmm. all customers' info, employee info, including finances, is the company required to let the customers and the employees know?
I think that's a state-specific thing, Matt. Most states have done that now. It certainly is best practice. We advise people about that all the time. Some states have laws on that. If they're asking in Tennessee, I confess to you, I just hadn't looked recently whether Tennessee has that law. But it absolutely is the best practice. And it's also the best practice to offer that identity theft protection.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That isn't required by law, but it's certainly the best practice.
And certainly from a public relations standpoint, if a company gets hacked like that, a lot of times they're going to do that on their own just to protect themselves.
The first thing is, I'll say this, they don't tell here's the worst thing that can happen. They get hacked and they don't tell anybody.
Right.
And then they get their identities. Well, now, let's see, the problem there is not the hacking. It's like Watergate. It wasn't the burglary, it's the cover-up. And if they know that they've been hacked and that, your info's out there and they don't tell you, then that's negligence. That's a problem.
Keith is coming back to the Trump trial, and he wants to know, my question is, why is this being tried if it's a felony in the federal court when it's not in a federal court? In other words, the confusion is, and I think this goes back to confusion about what the underlying crime is, whether there's some suggestion that has been made on the part of the left, the Trump haters. Well, it's a state elections violation case is what they're suggesting, because they know if they say it's a federal elections violation, well, then you have a problem with jurisdiction, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, the reason it's in a state court is he's charged under state law. And so, they cannot at the end of the trial say, oh, by the way, we're really accusing him of violating a federal law. I mean, that gets thrown out every time. This judge may not throw it out, but the appeals court will. But so the charges of violating state law are tried in the state court. Charges of violating federal law are in federal court. As far as we know, this case does not involve federal law.
Well, but as you and I have talked about many, many times, and I know this kind of enters my world. It goes away from the legal world and into the political world. I don't think any of this is about getting a successful verdict at the end of all of it. They just want a successful trial and perhaps a successful jury verdict. But I don't feel like smart people in New York City think this is going anywhere on appeal. Do you?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I don't think it ultimately matters to them whether it sticks or not. They're just trying to keep him from being elected president, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and part of the way they do that's embarrassing, you know, with all this porn star stuff. And the other part's keeping him from campaigning. And then in this just incredible, you know, he's the Teflon president. He just keeps getting stronger.
Everything they do makes him more powerful. Bill's on the line with a question about lawsuits. Bill, you're on with our man Jay St. Clair. What's your question, sir?
I got a question. I got a lawsuit against me for like $2.5 million and $5 million of punitive damages. It turns out that the lawsuit has to do with African artifacts and stuff that my uncle had acquired, but he acquired it through a nonprofit organization. And I didn't know it, but I've been part of this nonprofit organization now since 2006 in the state of Florida. I don't live in Florida. I live here in Tennessee. And then he closed it out just 2 years ago, making me the president, and my brother the vice president, my wife's the treasurer, and we'd never been part of this. And he's worth millions of dollars now, and he was a Catholic priest, but I found out just recently in the past year, he's been living in California. He's been married for 20 years. And he collected all this money, and the thing about it is, what's being sued, is he gave me a bunch of stuff, you know, this African artifact stuff some years back, and now he asked for it back, and I says, well, then you can pay me storage. And he says that that wasn't an agreement. I said, there wasn't an agreement that you were going to ask for it back either. It's just to go to the church where they can sell it for raffle. My question is, what should I do? His attorney says, just sign off and give it to him.
Sorry,
do you have an attorney, Bill?
If you've been sued for $2.5 million, the first thing you need to do very quickly is hire a lawyer.
What kind of lawyer do I get for this? I talked to one, and he's like 82 years old.
Hold on, Bill. I want Jay to say that again. Jay, what kind of lawyer should Bill get?
I'd get a really good one. I'd get somebody.
Bill. I don't mean to laugh. It's a very serious situation for you. I'm sorry.
I've been searching for like months, and the only one I found was this guy that's 82 years old. And I gave him $2,000, and then now he says, I don't know if I want to take this case.
Have you actually been served with the papers?
Oh, yeah. And listen, I called up the state attendant, the Secretary of State in Florida, and asked them about me being on this nonprofit organization. And they looked it up. He says, yeah, but it's been dissolved. I said, if it's been dissolved, can I reinstate it? And they said, yeah, just send in the $420. So I did. Now I got a certificate that says that I'm the president again, and I've never been. And he actually had my grandmother on it as vice president. She was dead for 2 years. And I got the state of Florida.
Where do you live right now? Where do you live?
Tennessee.
Where do you live, Bill?
Tennessee. In Linville, Tennessee.
Okay. Have you ever lived in Florida?
No, I've never lived in Florida.
Yeah, see, they may not even have personal jurisdiction of you in Florida, Bill. I'm telling you, sir, you need to get a lawyer, and you need to get a good one.
A good one. So I just need to probably just put my house on.
What is there? I mean, this is obviously it's a civil suit against you, Bill, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I mean, Jay, off the top of your head, do you know of any particular type of lawyer, just general practice, or?
No, you want to get it. See, the problem is you're going to need somebody in Florida. Do you have any family in Florida? Where in Florida is the suit filed?
No, it's filed here in Tennessee because in Giles County, because they come by and got all this artwork and stuff. I mean, he was selling pictures of Mother Teresa for $30,000 to Mel Gibson and stuff. And here's what I suggest you do, sir. You can find my office contact information on the internet. It's Jay St. Clair. I'm more of a sinner than a saint, but my name is Saint. Look for Jay St. Clair. You'll see my email address. Send me an email. I will do my due diligence and send you my best. You need a lawyer down in the county where you are. I will snoop around and use the sources I have, and I will send you my recommendation for the best attorney for you to hire for this case. All right, so it's J. St. Clair, like Saint and Clair?
S-T, yeah, S-T-C-L-A-I-R.
Okay.
And yeah, if you and I know from personal experience, Bill, if you type his name in, you will get him. He'll pop right up the Littler Mendelson site there from Birmingham, Alabama. Jay, you're so good to help him out. Thank you for that.
Well, here's the deal, man. When I get up to the pearly gates, St. Peter's going to open the Book of Life. And over on the right side, there's going to be a lot of big black X's. So I'm trying to get some check marks and put it on the left-hand side. And I figure every time I do this, I get a check mark.
Well, you're good. You're good to help him out. Bill, contact Jay. He's a good man, and he'll do some thorough due diligence and get you to the right person. Jay, have fun on the track. Thanks for spending an hour with us. I appreciate you getting out of the race car to talk to us on the phone.
Always my pleasure, man.